If someone has been in your team for a year and it's probably time to have a career conversation with them, the manager doesn't have to remember that. They just get sent a nudge. In the communications that they receive, there's a little template on how to have that growth conversation. Next one-on-one, they can just like follow those instructions. That's a massive load off a manager's shoulders.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Joris Luijke, who's the former Chief People Officer at Atlassian and Squarespace and co-founder of the employee communication and experience platform, PIN. During the podcast, Joris shares how to create a personalized employee experience, how to recognize and support employees during the moments that matter, how to reduce the volume of communication through personalization, and how to map the entire employee journey using PIN's new free-to-use tool. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Joris, welcome to the show. How are you?
Very good, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for staying up late for us.
Yeah,
probably.
That's the drill. I wake up early for the US audience and I go to bed late for the folks in Europe.
Yeah,
it's my life.
People probably can't tell that from your accent, but you're in Australia, right now?
I'm in Australia. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm born and raised in Holland. Moved around the world, really. I lived in New York, lived in Spain, and now back home in Sydney, Australia.
Let's kind of take a step back for a second. Tell everyone a little bit more about yourself personally and sort of your journey to where we are now.
After university, I did some odd jobs, and then I landed a job at a company called Atlassian, which was back then still a small company. I stayed there for 6 years during their massive growth, leading HR for the company, which was just such a big learning and an amazing time. It's a great brand. Then after that, I moved to New York and did the same at Squarespace, another fast growth tech company, did the same there. And then I did another stint at a company called Typeform in Barcelona. Same thing there. After all these jobs running HR, I experienced the same problem time and time, which led me to becoming a founder because I wanted to stretch my own itch and wanted to solve the problems that I had running HR and actually trying to build solutions. I've been incredibly lucky. I caught up with a wonderful human being, John Williams, who's the co-founder of Culture Amp, another big player in the HR tech space. John and I joined forces and we started PIN, which is a tool in the employee experience space. That's kind of my journey in very, very short.
What was the itch you was trying to scratch?
HR teams are wonderful, but we're very reactive. That's the nature of our job. People constantly come to us with requests for help and support and guidance as they experience all these moments that matter, like during their employee journeys. People maybe getting promoted, they move teams, they move countries, they entering the organization, they exiting the organization, they may change job levels. All of these moments where people need guidance and support are often forgotten. And nothing is more frustrating running HR than knowing that these moments will occur, knowing what information people need at those moments, but just not being able to be there for the people when they really need us. That's the problem that I wanted to solve. And that's what we do with PIN. We provide people automatically with the right information at the right time as they experience key moments that matter throughout their employee journey. Like a quick example, let's say a person moves from 0 to 1 or more direct reports. We recognize that automatically because they've just become a manager, and we can automatically send them information on what they need to do and know in their first day as a manager, right? They probably need to run a kickoff one-on-one. We can send them information on how to run a kickoff one-on-one with their new direct reports.
What was the traditional way of doing that?
Manager training. When I was running HR, I would have an organization like Live Labs coming in or like a training provider. And every half a year, we would train our managers. But the problem, of course, is that although those are great events and generally speaking, those training sessions are well rated by people who attend. The problem is that people have to wait for a while until they get that training. Secondly, by the time they have to apply the information that they learned, it's probably already too late because they have forgotten half the stuff.
You basically missed the moment.
A lot of things just fall between the cracks, right? Or people just don't get the support. That's the reality. Manager training is generally speaking something that does get covered. But let's say a person is coming back from parental leave. How often does the manager come to HR too late in a situation like that? How often does the manager not put together a return to work plan? Let's take another situation, a real life situation. When I was running HR at Squarespace, we had a massive customer support team. And sometimes a manager would come to me saying, hey, I've got a big performance issue with one of my support agents. I would be thinking like, what happened, right? This support agent was doing fine, performing fine a few months ago. And now you're talking about letting them go, right? What's going on here? Now, the person's NPS score, CSAT score may have been dropping for a few weeks prior to that. The manager didn't even notice, or they're like a 26-year-old team lead themselves. Either it didn't hit their radar or they didn't coach the person through a moment like that. With PIN, we can automatically identify a moment like that happening, and we can send coaching materials to that person's manager. So if a support agent has a drop in CSAT, we pick it up, and we can send coaching materials to that person's manager. It's those types of moments that really matter that are often lost. Those are crucial moments.
I kind of asked the question before, but more that was specific about training. But overall, how were you identifying the moments that matter in the past? Was it just manually doing it? Like, what was the approach?
Manually doing it? Yeah. I mean, you pull reports. Sometimes your HRES will send out like a little notification, right? Like a little nudge. People ignore them often, right? Like, for example, when someone's anniversary is coming up, you may get a little nudge from Bamboo HR or Workday, but they're very impersonal and they're system notifications, so people ignore them. So with PIN, we can automatically detect, hey, it's someone's 5-year anniversary. You should probably celebrate that differently from your 3-year anniversary. So here's the information for how to handle a 5-year anniversary. We can send that from your HR business partner as a direct Slack message to that person's manager a few days prior, right? It's all super, super personalized. It feels like HR is everywhere in a very personal way. It's Slack sending out these personal notifications from your HR people to the people in the organization as they experience these moments. And then it's super contextual as well. Like if we sending instructions on how to handle return to work for a returning parent in Germany versus the US, where the rules are slightly different, you will get different content sent to you. If you ask how we did it at Atlassian, for example, we put everything on Confluence, on our handbooks and our wikis, right? Those wikis became this massive ocean of information. No one could bloody find anything, right? And information management in companies is a big problem.
I feel like one of the biggest winners also, of course, the employee, but the other is the managers, right? They're so busy. They already have a hard enough job as it is. So trying to remember all of those moments that matter, it's impossible. Let's be honest.
It's totally impossible
to be able to do that.
I mean, manager enablement, it's not just manager training, but it's providing, as you say, those nudges to managers for the people in their team. If someone joins your team from another team, like an internal move, you probably have to have a transition meeting between old manager, new manager, and that transitioning employees. That's good practice. Now, at Atlassian, we may have had a template for that somewhere hiding on Confluence. No one is going to read that. If the message comes automatically from your business partner to the manager with how to handle a transition like that, it's super timely. It's super contextual. Of course, it's going to be picked up. It's almost easier to use the information than it is not to. That's the power of the system.
Are you linking this back to like employee benefits as well and like learning resources?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like on the learning, like sometimes you may link back to like WorkRamp or Docebo or any LMS systems, right? So we are like the communication layer in between. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like things like open enrollments, right? I mean, this is the bane of existence in HR teams. Annoyingly have to remind people to do things as it relates to their benefits. You can just set that up like an open enrollment period and all those notifications will run automatically. If, let's say, a person has hardly taken any annual leave in the last 6 months, we can nudge the person's manager saying, hey, Toby has hardly taken any annual leave. We would recommend you having a chat with him during your next one-on-one, and this is how you can handle a situation like that. So what we do is we are very good at nudging people, and then for hundreds and hundreds of moments that matter during the journey, we also supply the content. So a company doesn't have to think of, okay, what do I communicate to employees at all those moments?
Oh, so you help them. Oh, really? That's cool. Makes it even easier.
We've got the largest library of employee communications in the world. Like I doubt that anyone has more than Pin has in the system.
I didn't realize that you actually provide the templates as well. That's really helpful.
Yeah,
Because
it's
sometimes you
fantastic.
got it, you're like, okay, that's great, but now what do I write?
Yeah, exactly. First of all, like in the old days, like, you would, if you wanted to use it, create something like this, you may have sticked something together. You may have used Zapier or whatever to connect data with, and then you still have to think about the content as well and the personalization of the content. And by that time, you're just like throwing your hands in the air, like, okay, I give up, right? Because it's just too much.
And especially when you want to create a custom experience for every employee, right?
Yeah.
You can't do that without technology. You can't manually do that.
And in other professions, this has been like used for a long time. You run a podcast, you do a lot of marketing, right? You use tools like HubSpot and Marketo, right? Yeah. To communicate with folks out in the market, right? Somewhere along the customer journey, not the employee journey, but the customer journey, people are being notified, right? If you poke around on someone's website and open a few Instagram posts, surely you're going to be enrolled in some kind of a sequence of communication that is sent to you, probably to sell something to you, right? We're not selling anything. We're providing helpful contextual information that gives people confidence to deal with any situation at work. But the concept is the same. It's not the customer journey. It's the employee journey. It's not marketing automation. It's the automation of helpful communications to folks as they experience stuff.
Why do you think that's taken so long? Like you just said, we've been doing this with our customers for so long. Well, why has it taken so long?
There's this Dutch expression, which is, it feels like kicking in an open door.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's so obvious. For the life of me, I can't understand it. And I really, truly believe, of course, we hope it's going to be Pin that takes up the biggest slice of the market. But I believe that there will be a Pin in every organization in the world. Whether people choose Pin as their Pin is, that's a different discussion altogether. And that's an execution problem. But I think just like in marketing, you can't imagine a world without marketing automation anymore.
Yeah.
But why haven't we used that inside organizations? We have way more data on our people than on a unknown prospect out there in the world.
And I feel like especially the new generation coming in, they kind of demand that experience. They expect that experience. Maybe demand's a bit strong, but they expect that experience.
Not that long ago, we were sitting next to each other in the office, right? So if someone came back from parental leave, you would know, right? If someone would join your team, you would know. But I think remote and the move to hybrid and more distributed organizations has definitely made this more important. So you could probably get away with it a little bit more before, but in a large organization or in a distributed organization, you're just too disconnected. What Pin does is it really creates these connections and just reminds people, hey, you've got a person who's sitting on the other side of the world. They're coming back from parental leave. They have their 1-year anniversary coming up, or it's their day 90. And you're going to miss those moments without sitting next to someone.
What is the impact of missing those moments that matter? What are you looking at from the research that you and the team have done?
There's a cognitive load for managers. If you hear a lot about managers feeling very stressed, and that's increased. One really great benefit is that they don't have to hold all of these moments in their heads, and they don't have to then think and research what they then need to do and say. If someone has been in your team for a year, and it's probably time to have a career conversation with them, the manager doesn't have to remember that. They just get sent a nudge. In the communications that they receive, there's a little template on how to have that growth conversation. So they literally just can follow the questions. It's right then and there. Next one-on-one, they can just follow those instructions. That's a massive load off a manager's shoulders. We have as a mission in a company to create calmer organizations. One part of that is the calm of people feeling more confident and calm in situations. And secondly, because we're sending communications that is very targeted, we actually send less communications. The volume of communications decreases. It's just more targeted communications. We're kind of trying to battle this endless communications that just goes to everyone that should only go to a handful of people.
That's a big issue, right? Because then people just don't even open the messages.
Yeah, I'll give you one example. Like when I was, of course, at Atlassian, we had global offices. Like, let's say Diwali would come up. We had an office in India, Diwali, big deal, Festival of the Lights. I would send out a communication like that to everyone in the company or to all managers on what to do in a situation like that, which in that case was a happy situation, a holiday is coming up. Now with Pin, we can instead target a manager who's, let's say, in New York City, who has a direct report who's in India, and identify that manager and send them a message around just before Diwali saying, hey, your report has Diwali coming up. Maybe wish them a happy time with friends and family. And by the way, be aware that they're not going to be in the office for some time. That is me sending communications to a handful of managers versus hundreds of managers, right? With every time we send communications en masse, people are going to start ignoring it. That's something that we really try to avoid.
One of the quotes I saw from you was, when we impact communication, we impact culture.
The reason for that is, if you think about culture, what is culture? Culture is merely people behaving in a certain way the majority of the time, right? If the majority of your people have lunch together on a Friday, the majority of the time, you have a culture of having lunch together on a Friday, right? So it's really, I'm getting a bit geeky here. If you can manipulate or nudge people towards certain behaviors, you can therefore affect culture. If you want to instill a culture of feedback, you can, within the timely nudges, you can nudge people towards providing more feedback at all those moments that matter, right? If you want a culture of urgency, if you want a culture of whatever, and you can actually nudge it, but you have to be close to the actual moments when people behave in a certain way. And you have to be able to systematically do that. So a system like PIN is capable of changing behaviors and therefore changing cultures over time.
One of the things that came to mind while you were saying that, and because I had a conversation recently with Chief People Officer at Rivian, she's gone from a couple of thousand employees to 20,000 in 3 years. And one of the things he was talking about is, how do you scale culture?
So this is a prime example. Helen funnily ran HR at Atlassian after me.
Okay.
So, yeah, so she was actually at Atlassian as well.
Okay.
So she has gone through that scale up like multiple times as well. I think ultimately the problem that we have in HR in these fast growth companies is that we're kind of losing touch of people, right? And this is where you feel like if you're 150 people, you still feel very connected, and then you're 1,000 people and suddenly people feel really grumpy because it doesn't feel like they're being supported and listened to anymore. Now, what PIN does very well is, because it's automated, you can basically be anywhere at any point at scale. So it's almost like there's a little HR angel sitting on a person's shoulder, whispering in the person's ears like, hey, you should be doing X, Y, and Z. Anything you can do at scale is able to impact culture as you grow. And there's the stick approach, like, hey, you must do X, you must do Y, the multitude of rules. And this often happens in larger growing companies. The bureaucracy starts to build up. There's more and more rules, and people get grumpy because the old guard says, what is going on with all these rules, right? That can have a very detrimental effect on culture. The better thing would give people suggestions on what to do and almost make it easier for them to follow the suggested behaviors versus not to follow the suggested behaviors. The example of the growth conversation done properly, or having a culture of celebrations through a recognition program, or celebrating someone's 5-year anniversary or 1-year anniversary, all of these things should be scalable. Anything that is manual at that scale is just not going to happen. I'll give you one example of a culture of onboarding through buddies. Buddy programs, generally speaking, fall flat within, even at 150 people, they can fall flat because there's so much manual labor involved. Yeah. Like a person in HR says like, oh, this new hire is starting, I'm going to select this buddy and connect them together. It's going to fall over. I tried it at Atlassian. It nearly killed me. It's so hard to manage a program like that. But if you get built-in technology to scale that, it's so much easier. So for example, with PIN, you can send to the hiring manager, they receive a little Slack from the onboarding specialist as a direct message automatically saying, hey, your new hire is starting in a few weeks' time. Can you please select a buddy? It automatically within Slack, they can select a buddy. It will show the buddies who have been selected multiple times in the past weeks, because you don't always want to select the same people. The system just runs from there. The buddy then receives a message on the day one of the new starter starting with a suggested Slack message saying, hey, this is how you can introduce yourself. Again, making their life easier as well. That is scaling culture by nudging people.
Love that. Where are you capturing all of this data? Is it capturing in the HCM or directly within PIN?
Most of the information comes from the different systems that we integrate with. HRIS is a big system, obviously. Other systems as well, maybe Zendesk, Salesforce. If you can draw data out of them, we can basically have a little profile on every single employee.
Okay.
And every time something changes to that employee's profile, we can action or trigger communication to go out automatically. That you can set that up. So the platform basically manages all of that stuff. The thing though, at some point, as we were building all of like these communications that were going out at these different moments during the journey, companies started to wonder, but which moments are important in my journey?
That's exactly what I was just thinking. Yeah.
You know, how do you organize all of those moments? So that was a challenge that we had. That's why we started building a new tool in addition to our communication platform that basically allows companies to design their employee journey, to identify, hey, this is a moment that matters. This is a moment that matters. This is a moment that matters. Basically creating an employee journey map. And I know if you have had like guests on the show of people who created their journey maps, it's incredibly powerful and incredibly hard to do, because you have to literally consider hundreds of moments that can happen during an employee's journey, and then all associated touch points as well. Like, let's say the example of a person coming back from parental leave, there's a touch point with the manager of that person. There's a touch point with the employee themselves. Those are 2 touch points associated with this one moment. It's multiplied. All of the moments have touch points as well. What we created is a employee journey designer that basically provides an overview of all possible moments that you can possibly think of. And then you can say, I use this one. I don't use that one. I don't use that one. So you can basically build your own employee journey map within a flash of the time, like so much faster than you don't have to hold all of those moments in your head anymore. And that's kind of the next iteration of what Pin does.
It's even more complex, right? Because you mentioned obviously the touch points, but then you've got the various technology touch points. So because then you're like, okay, now we've got 4 different interactions within 10 different platforms.
So you want to register it. So this is exactly it, right? So when I was doing journey mapping with my teammates in the past, I would like go on a whiteboard and had all these sticky notes, right? And it became, really difficult very quickly because of the complexity of all of this stuff. Again, technology solves a lot, right? So with a software product that actually allows you to do that, you can say, hey, these touch points are served by my system ServiceNow or Jira Service Desk, and these touch points are served by my ATS, my applicant tracking system. So basically you can assign per touch point which technology drives a successful experience for the end recipient, which is the employee, because it's an employee journey map, right? You can filter, so you can look at your map of all the moments that are served by system X or system Y. You can look at all the moments that are owned by L&D, learning and development. You can see all the moments that you currently don't have yet. You can basically filter by whatever tag you have associated with the touch points, which is incredibly helpful if you want to improve any journey, right? So that's really cool.
The secret sauce of this though is also just being where they already are. So if they're already in Teams, stay in Teams. If they're already in Slack, keep it in Slack. Like, they're not having to go somewhere else. It's in their flow of work, right?
I mean, one of the big advantages of a system like Pin is employees don't even know that companies like, we work with companies like MongoDB and SimilarWeb and Amplitude and Lucid and, OpenAI, like all these amazing companies. If you ask employees at those companies, have you heard of Pin? They probably won't even know what Pin is, because we leverage the existing communication platforms, right? HR will know, but the folks in the company won't, because they just receive a message from Mary in L&D when they got promoted to be a manager via Slack. That's the communication platform that they're used to, and nothing changes with Pin on that. So that's actually really powerful.
I think everyone listening can understand the value of something like this, but how do you demonstrate and measure ROI?
I think there's 2 areas. Firstly, it's just a CFO is very happy with time savings, just sheer hours that you don't have to focus on sending things manually. Take a process like onboarding.
Yeah,
you literally have folks like coordinating onboarding. If your team grows from 1,000 to 2,000 people, you don't have to hire 1 or 2 new onboarding coordinators. The system can just do it for you. All of those messages can be automated, and there can just be one person doing onboarding, seeing only dropping in when something fails, basically. I think we like MongoDB, for example, they had a person in learning and development downloading reports from SuccessFactors every week, identifying people who got promoted to manager. She would manually send out communications to those managers, wow. Right? A sequence of communications. The program was amazing, fantastic. But this poor person was doing all of this stuff manually, right? Now she doesn't have to do that. And in addition to that, she can now see which pieces of communication actually perform better versus others. That's an incredibly powerful, encouraging, and positive way of measuring employee experience and measure our work in HR as well, which is super cool.
It'd be so cool to see the data of like where we're showing up as an organization where at the moment that matter. Right, just having that data set will be so cool to be able
to having the overview, like for starters, just knowing, all the moments that matter and what you do as an organization and who handles which moments that matter. So, you're not as siloed anymore, right? It's not like L&D.
That's how it is as well, right? It's true. L&D siloed over here,
super siloed. Yeah, exactly. Now you can see, now L&D can see, okay, how does my work relate to everyone else's work in the entire employee experience? It's such a better way of measuring your impact, right? Because ultimately, it doesn't really matter which L&D programs you deliver. What matters is what is the experience of, like, put yourself in the shoes of a person who actually joins your company and moves through your company all the way through to exit an alumni program. What is their experience like? That's what HR is about.
What's your hopes for the future of this?
I remember my first job as a manager, I didn't get any help. People didn't provide me with any information. My manager was great, but he gave me a little bit of coaching, perhaps if there was a real fire, but I feel completely unconfident. I didn't do one-on-ones. I didn't even know how to do one-on-ones, right? I don't want anyone to go through an experience like that. I would want people to feel confident in their work. People want to do good work. No one goes to work wanting to do a shit job, but you just don't know what you don't know. And
100%.
Many times things just go unnoticed. And by the time you hit a situation, you may be too late. The first time I had someone coming back from parental leave who was on my team, I was too late. Not because I didn't want to do a good job. And I was in HR. I should know these things, right? This happens all the time. How many times have I forgotten someone's anniversary? How many times was I slightly disappointed that my manager didn't, wish me a happy birthday? How many times did I really do a transition of a person moving into my team from another team? How often did I manage that conversation, that transition well? Did I actually sit down with that person's old manager and have a three-way conversation between the transitioning employee and the old manager? No, I didn't, right? Because I didn't know. I want people to feel a little bit more confident.
I think everyone listening can relate. But listen, I love what you're doing, and for everyone listening, I'm really excited for them to get hold of the employee journey mapper tool, right? So if wherever you're listening or watching right now, there'll be a link in the description. So make sure you check that out. Share it with the rest of your HR team as well. Get together in a meeting. Use it together, right? Co-create. That is super exciting. I love what you're doing. Haven't really come across any organizations doing this, which is kind of crazy.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Which is when we first connected, which was only a week ago. I was like, wow, okay, how did I not know about this? So really excited for you and the team, and I appreciate you taking the time out to come on the show.
Thanks so much. It was lovely. Thank you so much.